new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Happy Valentine's Day. Hopefully you guys all remembered, especially if you have a significant other. You know, Valentine's Day is traditionally associated with love and romance. When I was single, Valentine's Day was just another day, right? But when you have a significant other, married or dating or engaged or whatever, Valentine's Day, it takes on a different meaning. I think when I was in like grade school, I remember like, you know, those little, what are those things called? Those candies? Those little hearts has all these like different sayings on. Oh? Sweethearts? Is that what that's called? I don't even know what that's called anymore. I haven't seen those in a long time, but I remember, you know, at school, you know, you give it out and, you know, people give each other like little cards, be my Valentines, those type of things. You know, it puts a pressure on us if we have significant others to do something more. And I don't know, for those who have been married a long time, each year, does it get harder and harder? You know, it's like you, at the beginning, I think, you know, guys, if you're single, listen to what I'm saying. At the beginning, we go all out, and you set a standard, and each year you have to go higher and higher and higher, right? And so, depending on how you do it, some people, they didn't even know today was Valentine's, or Valentine's Day was coming up. It's one of these days that it's on the calendar, and, you know, it's a big day for romance, right? People express their love and their affection for one another. Did you know that it is estimated 6 million people get engaged on Valentine's Day? That's in America. 6 million people get engaged on Valentine's Day. It's a day of romance. I actually know someone who proposed on Valentine's Day, and they got married. So maybe we know people. They take Valentine's Day as an opportunity to propose. 6 million people. You know, Valentine's Day is a huge business in America. The National Retail Foundation released a report. They projected, this was, I think, released about a week or so ago. They projected how much Americans will spend. American consumers were expected to spend $20 billion on this holiday. That rivals some of the biggest spending days in America. $20 billion. Where are they spending this money? So they polled a bunch of people, and of the people that responded, 50% of consumers surveyed said they plan to buy candy, spending an estimated total of $1.7 billion. 38.3% of Valentine's Day revelers plan to treat their dates to a night out at a restaurant, tickets to a show, or another experience, for a total of $4.5 billion. $4.4 billion will likely be spent on necklaces, earrings, and other jewelry. $1.1 billion is forecast to be spent on greeting cards. Greeting cards, $1.1 billion. $1.9 billion is estimated to be spent on flowers. Huge day, right? Or actually, Valentine's is becoming like a weekend thing. It's like a couple of days before and everything. So a weekend, especially like today where it falls on a Sunday. 1.9 billion and 2 billion is expected to be spent on apparel. $20 billion is what is estimated to be spent this year. And these numbers continue to rise. And especially this year, retailers are thinking, because gas prices have been so low, that Americans have extra money in their pocket. Therefore, these numbers could rise. It's obviously become very commercialized. A lot of money is spent on this day. Today in America, people are thinking about love, and they're expressing it in various ways. Not because it's Sunday, but it's because it's Valentine's Day. And I think it's a great time for us to reflect and examine the topic of love. And we come to John chapter 13. Here, Jesus gives us a command, right? As we strive to be a disciple of Jesus, we ask this question: what does a disciple of Jesus look like? We've been studying the life and ministry of Jesus because we want to know more about him. You know, we want to not only want to know more about him, but because we may not be familiar with some of the things that he did or taught, but it's because ultimately that's who we want to become. That's the mission statement that our church really emphasizes, right? To become a disciple, to be a mature Christian. In today's passage in John chapter 13, he gives us an answer to what does his disciple look like. He gives us an example, and in doing so, in the process, he actually gives us a new standard of love. And one of the greatest attributes of Jesus, I think, is his love. It is the love that set him apart from others. And it is this love that we are called to imitate. In the beginning of verse 34, Jesus says that he is giving a new command. He says, "A new command I give you. Love one another." If we really think about that command, to love one another, is that really a new command? Is Jesus really giving us a new command? In John chapter 13, verse 34. Leviticus 19, verse 18 says this: "You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." See, even in the Old Testament, this command to love one another or to love others was there. So what's new about this command that Jesus is giving us in verse 34? Why is this command? Jesus says, "A new command I give you." What about this command makes it new? It is because of the words that come after "a new command I give you." As I have loved you, so you must love one another. That is actually what makes this command new. As I have loved you. Christ's command to love as I have loved you, that is the new commandment. When Christians express love towards others, it should not be just as we love ourselves, but as Christ loved us. And when we think about that a little bit more, as we unpack this verse a little bit, and what this has in terms of meaning in our daily life, I think we begin to understand it's not just simple love. And I think today, being Valentine's Day, is a great time for us to examine this topic of love. Jesus loved us. So the question we ask is, how much did Jesus love us? And ultimately, he loved us enough to die on the cross for our sins. That is the type of love that Jesus is commanding. Love as I have loved. That is the new command. My professor of New Testament studies, or biblical studies at Western Seminary, he said this about this topic of love in this section here. He says the love Jesus is referring to here is not merely emotional attachment or personal affection, but rather it's a commitment that seeks the ultimate good of the other person, even to the point of personal sacrifice. This kind of love that Jesus is talking about is more than emotional attachment or personal affection. When I think about Valentine's Day, a lot of it is that. It's that personal affection, right? It could be among friends. It could be very innocent. But it's more this emotional, personal affection that is shown to one another. Valentine's Day is great. But the romance that is normally associated with it, because it's rooted in that personal affection or that emotion or the emotional attachment aspect, the love that is, I think, translated or communicated on Valentine's Day tends to be a little shallow. Generally speaking, not for all people. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of romance, but it doesn't have the depth and doesn't have the depth that Jesus is talking about here. Jesus is demonstrating and teaching a love that seeks the ultimate good of the other. It is not a love for the faint-hearted. This is an agape love. Jesus' command is to keep loving one another. Love as Jesus himself loved. You know, what would happen if you started loving others as Jesus loved? How would marriage look if we seek the ultimate good of the other person, of our spouse? How many relationships are broken in America, in our time, in our families even, because people fail to seek the ultimate good of the other person? What would happen to this world if Christians loved as Jesus loved? I was extremely convicted the last couple of weeks as I was preparing this message. Because I had to reflect on myself a little bit. Am I loving as Jesus loved? No matter what your views are, no matter what the people do, I'm shocked. Whether it's in California or whether here in Beaverton, whenever you get off the freeway, there are people standing there asking for help, whatever sign that they hold. Some of the signs are very creative. Some of the people are, social media. I remember there was a post on Facebook where this guy, he held up a sign. There was a picture that they put up. These two guys are standing asking for money. They're young kids, teenagers or something like that. And the guy standing next to him with the sign, I offered these two a job. They refused. Do not give them any money. He said that he was there and there's a video that he posted. He's like, hey, I own a business down the street. Come on in. I'll give you guys a job. You can come and work for me today. And those two replied, we're not from around here. He said, it doesn't matter. It's better than you guys standing on the street. If you're hungry, I will give you a job. Come. And they refused. And so he stood next to them with the sign. His thing was, if they have the right to stand there with that sign, I also have a right to stand here with this sign as well. No matter what your views are about those people, one of the things that I think the Lord really convicted me was, are you loving these people? All peoples, no matter what you believe that they will do with that money, are you really loving them? Now, I'm not advocating that we all leave here on the way home, open the window, and give money. That's for each one of us to really decide. But one of the things after church, my wife in California, after church, she would come home with the kids, and the way that they would come out of the church, they would get onto the local freeway there, and then they would exit. And in that exit, they always have people. And our church used to provide Korean pastries. Those that are individually bagged. I don't know if a church member owns a bakery or not, but every Sunday there will be boxes and boxes of pastries that are given to various groups. And whenever Sundays, my kids would run into the newcomers lounge, and there will be pastries there. They will go in there and grab some pastries. When that is all done and there's some leftover, they will bring it out, and my kids would just grab a few. They would always give us some. And what my wife began to do on the way home is she would see these people standing there asking for food. She would roll down the windows, and my kids would give to them the pastry. And I think that was an incredible thing that she did, that she's teaching them. Not to give them free food, but to show compassion and love. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about. What would happen if we really loved this way? Many times people view Christians as being no different. Selfish, indifferent. What would happen if we started loving as Jesus loved? This new type of love will be the distinguishing characteristic. distinguishing mark of Jesus' followers. Their love for one another will distinguish them from others. What does a disciple of Jesus look like? We look different by our love. We are different because of the compassion. We are different because of the love that we have received. It is that love we are called to express and to share and to show. Christ's love to his disciples was a self-abandoning, self-sacrificing love. Putting into practice his "as I have loved you" kind of love, Jesus willingly paid the price for our sins. John 15, verse 13 says this: "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends." Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. The great cost of our sin was Christ's suffering, his torture and horrific death. That is the self-sacrificial love that he showed for all mankind. Without that love, we would have no hope and no opportunity to live forever. We are called to love as Jesus loved. A disciple of Jesus is expected to humbly serve. Where I get this is the beginning of chapter 13. One of the ways that this new love plays out is how we serve others. So first, we said disciple of Jesus is expected to love as Jesus loved. How does this love play out then? We get the example right before the verses that we read in chapter 13. It's humble service. No task is too lowly for Jesus' disciples, because love cannot be selective on which tasks to do and which not to do. Sometimes we are willing to do certain things, but not other things, because we see that as a little below us. One of the things that we see in the corporate world is these kind of words come out. That's below my pay grade. What that means is, no, I can't do that. I'm above that task or that job that you're asking me to do. My wife and I, we talk a lot, and one of the things that I share with her is when I left Oregon and went down to a school in California called World Mission University. It's a Korean, it's a university, Bible college and seminary that is been accredited and approved to teach in Korean in America. Yeah, I know, it's weird. The U.S. government, Department of Education, and all the accreditors are like, you know what, we are fine with you teaching in Korean, issuing accredited degrees. So biblical studies, counseling, music, theology, Masters of Divinity, Doctorate of Ministry. The school has bachelor's and master's in music as well. Everything is taught predominantly in Korean. And one of the things that I share with her is the things when I first moved to the school, got to the school, anything that my boss asked me, we did it. So there's a guy that I used to work with. He's still there. He's been there as a student. He started in 2000. After he graduated, he started working there. So he's been there for 16 years, working and as a student. One of the things that we did when we first moved there is the school was beginning to get developed, and so they moved into a new facility. They had old furniture. So one day, my boss would be like, "Hey, I need you guys to go to IKEA tomorrow morning and buy some desks." We're like, "Okay." So we go to IKEA. Him and I, we take our school van, no seats in the back. We take it all out. We take a van. We go to IKEA. We're shopping. This is my work day. We go to IKEA. We shop. We buy stuff. We put it down, and on the way back, we grab some lunch. We come back after lunch. We start assembling because there's no one else to do that. So we're assembling, and 5 o'clock hits. We go home. We come back next morning, continue assembling, setting up the office, moving things. For the first year, that was very common. My work day was about cleaning, was about organizing and setting up. I could have said, hey, you brought me here as this level. That is below me. I cannot do that. I could have said that. Because we've had people at the school, we've asked them to do something, and they're like, I don't think that's my job. There's a mindset. I am a professor. I have a doctorate degree. I cannot do what you're asking me to do. Humble service. We cannot say there's a certain task that I will do and certain tasks that I will not do. But it's very common for us to do that and think. Sometimes we do it, and inside we're like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe they're asking me to do this. We've all been there, I think. This new command to love, it comes on the heels of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples in chapter 13. Jesus washing the disciples' feet, in doing so, he actually sets a pattern for humble service to one another in the church. Let me give you I feel like we need to get a little background on the washing of the feet, because I think when we understand the washing of the feet and what that job was all about, I think you will understand the significance of, you will appreciate in greater detail what Jesus did. Washing the guests' feet was a job that was for household servants to carry out when the guests arrived. Okay? Guests, teachers, leaders were not required or even expected to wash someone else's feet. Okay? There was no expectation. So if you look at disciples of Jesus and Jesus, when you look at them, they're having the Lord's Supper. Okay, John chapter 13. They have just come and they're about to take the Lord's Supper. Jesus, as they come into the upper room, he begins to wash the feet. Okay? Jesus and his disciples, the group right there will be no one that would be expected to wash someone's feet. That's the first thing that we need to understand. Certainly, no one of repute or standing will be seen dead washing another person's feet. Once again, disciples, Jesus, they will be quote-unquote disqualified from doing this task. It is also highly unlikely that Jewish slaves would have to wash the feet of their masters. If not the Jewish slaves, then who? It would be a task that's normally reserved for Gentile slaves. Washing of the feet was something that only the lowliest of servants were required to do. It's a task that no one volunteered for. None of the disciples were ready to volunteer for such a task. For each would have considered it an admission of inferiority to all the others. Remember that there was a discussion. There was a debate by the disciples. Who was the greatest, right? Turn with me to Luke chapter 22. Because Luke 22, he gives us into another insight into this whole passage and whole story. Luke chapter 22, verse 24 says this: a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be greatest. And if you look at the verses before verse 24 in Luke chapter 22, what just happened? What is going on here? What's the setting? Little interactive here. Somebody, what's the setting here? Lord's Supper. Okay, did you catch that? During the Lord's Supper, a dispute rose among them about who was the greatest. You know, there are times, these are the kind of moments when I shake my head at the disciples. But I can be very critical of them, and it's easy to, but I also have to remember, maybe obviously, they had a misunderstanding about the kingdom that Jesus was talking about, or Jesus came to establish. They were thinking that it's an earthly kingdom, earthly rule, that Jesus or the Messiah would come and overthrow the Roman Empire or the Roman government. It would release them from their bondage that they were in. that was more of a political Messiah or political understanding of the Messiah. Whereas Jesus, he didn't come for that. So in that mind, when they're thinking, Jesus is saying, hey, pretty soon you guys are not going to be able to see me. Oh, it's coming. The time is coming. Jesus is alluding to this time when the work that he came to do will be fulfilled. And in that moment, then they're like, oh, the kingdom's coming sooner. Oh, you know Jesus loves me more. Oh, no, you got it wrong, Peter. You talk too much, man. And John's like, no, he loves me. So there was a dispute during the Lord's Supper. I don't know why I never caught Luke's timeline before, but as I'm looking at this, in the event of what's going on, during the Lord's Supper, they were arguing about who was the greatest. Disciples would never volunteer to wash the feet of each other. They were too concerned about who is the greatest. Even after Jesus has washed their feet, they wanted to determine who was greater. He washed their feet. And during the Lord's Supper, they had this argument. The pupils of a rabbi, or rabbi students basically, may be required to perform various duties for him. Okay? Maybe like, taking care of stuff, running errands or whatever. But they would never be expected to wash his feet. A student would never be required to wash his master's feet. This makes what Jesus did all the more impressive. Here we see the rabbi, the teacher, doing something for the students that wasn't even expected of them. Jesus did the very thing that they were never even required to do, which is to wash the feet of their master. When we understand the background of that, we see now what Jesus is saying. This is the radical love that he's talking about. This is the new love that he's talking about. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. This is a radical love. John chapter 13, verse 14 and 15. After Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, he says this. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus washed the feet of his disciples. The teacher, the rabbi, washed the feet of his disciples in a demonstration of ultimate love and service. And Jesus wants his disciples to do the same. Because when we do that, verse 35 of John chapter 13 says this, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples. If you love one another, if you humbly serve one another. This is how people will know that you are my disciples. This new type of love will set Jesus' disciples apart from all others. This self-sacrificing love is so countercultural that people will see it and know that you are a follower of Jesus. That is unmistakable. Do what is unexpected. Love and serve in a way that the world has never seen. It is a mark of Jesus' disciple. Humble love and service is radical. It's different, and unfortunately, it's rare. This is a great time. Today is a great time to examine the topic of love. We're called to humbly serve. Do things that no one else will do. Love in a way as Jesus loved. The thing about these holidays, Valentine's Day, Christmas even, Thanksgiving, that it's on the conscience of the people. It's on our thoughts for that one day or a few days preceding it. But once the day is over, it's all but forgotten. I've actually had husbands who've joked about this. They said this, oh, I got the I love you out of the way this year. I'll have to do this again for 364 more days. Oh, this is when I was single. This was the wisdom that this man was giving to me. I got it out of the way. That mindset, we don't get this out of the way. But the holidays like this, even Thanksgiving, before Thanksgiving we live whatever, and on that day we kind of give thanks, and then afterwards it's like we turn that off again. One day in the year, people show their love. But all the other days, it's like our society kind of goes back to being rude, being impatient, indifferent, selfish. Christians, we are called to a new standard of love. To love as Jesus loved. When we love this way, the whole world will know that we are Jesus' disciples. I read this, I was reading devotionals a few weeks ago, and one of the authors asked this question: how would people come to recognize Christians? How would people come to recognize Christians? I really feel like her answer was right on. Well, she says, they would know us by our patience. They would know that we are Christians by our contentment, modesty, and humility. They would recognize us, for we would not be rude. We would seek the best for others, be difficult to make angry, and refuse to keep count of how many times we've been hurt. They would know us because evil makes us sad and truth makes us happy. They would know us because we protect the defenseless and we do not live in suspicion of others. They would know us by our hope. They would know us by our perseverance. That is what love looks like. Those should be the marks of Christ's disciples. That's an excerpt from 1 Corinthians 13. Jesus says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Let's pray.